Good afternoon and welcome to Emory University's Goizueta Business School. Thank you for joining us today for our Evening MBA Admissions web chat. I'm Nicole Hippass, Director of Program Marketing here at Goizueta, and I'm joined by Kathleen Edwards, who's on our admissions staff, and Jordan, who is a current part-time MBA student. I'll let them introduce themselves shortly, but first I'm going to do a little bit of housekeeping. I just want to remind you that we are taping this web chat, so if you miss anything, don't worry. We will send you the entire recording within a week of the end of today's chat. And we'll also do our best to answer any questions that you submit to us throughout the duration of the chat. Thank you to those who submitted questions already when you registered. We're going to be using those to start off the web chat, but if you have any other ones at any time, please go ahead and submit them. We also have a few folks behind the scenes that are going to help answer your questions, so we're going to do our best to get everyone's questions answered here today. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Kathleen. Let her introduce herself.
Hi everyone, my name is Kathleen Edwards. I'm Director of Evening MBA Admissions here at Goizueta Business School. I'm also a proud alumna of our Evening MBA program from a little while ago, so that's why we have a current student here with us with some more up-to-date perspective.
My name is Jordan Bunster. I'm an evening student of the MBA program, class of 2020. So one semester down, a couple more, 2020 to go, 3 more years to go.
Jordan, would you mind telling us a little bit about where you're currently employed and the type of work that you do?
Absolutely. I work for Genuine Parts Company. For the automotive side, we are the owners of Napa Auto Parts. I'm in their supply chain team. We have 6,000 retail locations across the United States and 57 distribution centers.
All right. So we're going to go ahead and jump right into admissions questions. And Kathleen, the first one's for you. First, let's just talk about, for folks that may be evaluating an MBA and trying to decide what's the right program for them. What type of candidates are most successful in our Evening MBA program?
Sure, absolutely. For our Evening MBA program, we're looking for experienced professionals who are ready to advance their career and build out their business acumen, whether that means rounding out their skill set if they already have business experience, business undergrad, academic study, or develop new skills or develop a specialty if they are working in an area, maybe they haven't studied business in the past, but they're trying to develop a specialty or advance their skills to the next level, whether it's to prepare for a management role, be more effective as a manager, and making decisions and leading an organization, making an impact in that organization, or changing careers, either way. So someone who's going to do well in our program successfully through the admissions process and then in the program will bring interesting progressive work experience, academic readiness, so a solid undergraduate background and possibly master's, and then also a readiness to make the most of their MBA experience and contribute to the Goizueta community.
Great. So I do know that we do have some students that are deciding, do they want to come back full-time, do they want to come back part-time? We offer 5 different MBA programs here. Can applicants apply to more than one program, and if they do, how is that application reviewed?
We make this a little hard on you. We give you 5 great MBA options and then expect you to choose the one that's the right fit for you, and that may be an easy answer. If you know you want to continue working, you are either really enjoying what you're doing or financially that makes sense. You may be considering a full-time program. You may be unsure. You may be more experienced and feel that our executive MBA program options might be a good fit for you. So there are a few different ways to, first of all, go about researching those programs and find the right fit for you. And then also, if you find that more than one of those programs is a great fit for you and your background and your goals, you can apply and be considered for up to 3 of our programs. So the first step to researching would be to review the options on the website. We've got lots of information for you, including student profiles. The schedule is obviously a big component that you'll want to consider what works with your professional either commitments at this point, or if you would like to consider full-time school and leave the workplace. So there's that. We also really encourage you to come for class visits, meeting current students, meeting professors, spending time on campus and in the classroom to see the personality and the conversation. All of our programs are MBA programs with the same faculty, the same academic expectations, but with a slightly different approach in terms of the experience level of the students in the classroom. So that's where you'll see the difference. So you may be a fit in terms of work experience for all of our programs if you're in a sweet spot. But typically the evening program, our average years of work experience tends to be around 5 to 6 years. Similar to our full-time tends to be around 4 or 5 years. Our executive programs average tends to be around 8 and 10 and 12 plus years of just the average years of work experience. So that's just a quick measure, and then you can go from there. But we really want to meet you and help you see what might be the differences and similarities and which might be the best fit for you. So if you've done that research, you've decided I'm really interested in the evening program and the one-year MBA program, or the weekend executive and the evening MBA program. And notice I am always going to say evening because that's always the most fun. But if you want to apply for more than one program, it's absolutely doable. It's just a matter of indicating that on your application form and determining which program is your first preference program and following that process in terms of the application details. The deadline and the interview process are the main things you want to make sure you're following the directions for your first preference program. So from an admissions committee standpoint, there's not an advantage or disadvantage to applying to more than one program. We're reviewing each applicant individually. So if someone's applying for the one-year program and the evening MBA program, they'll be reviewed by each committee where we're looking at the same criteria and determining the fit of that applicant for our academic and professional expectations and the fit of the program specifically. So you can be admitted to more than one program. You could be admitted to one and not admitted to another, or waitlisted to one, or any different kind of combination of those options. So then if you're admitted to more than one program, you would have some time to make your decision and meet with some more students and go from there, if that whatever helps you make your decision. But it's absolutely doable. Please don't check all 3 boxes just as a scattershot way of attempting to get into one of them, increasing your chances. Do the research first, apply to the programs you're interested in, and then we'll take it from there.
All right. Very thorough answer. That's very helpful. Jordan, you've been through this process.
Yeah.
How did you evaluate MBA programs? What criteria did you use to figure out which one was the right fit?
So I moved back to Atlanta around in September 2016 in the pursuit of the company moved me back, but also I wanted to further my education. And I looked at about 5 different programs. I spent a lot of time visiting classes, talking with current students, former students, looking at what they offer online, and started narrowing it down to the 3 in the key Atlanta area, So visiting classes was probably the biggest deciding factor, being able to experience what the students were seeing every day, talking with Kathleen during we had a breakfast session. And ultimately, as I look into the business needs that I wanted to accomplish, I felt Emory was the best fit for what I needed, with the experiential learning that they have and just the brand name behind it as well.
Okay, terrific. So Kathleen, back to you. Let's talk a little bit about the admissions philosophy. We're going to dive in to each component of the admissions process and answer a few questions about each part. But overall, what do you guys think about? What are you evaluating when you're looking at applications?
Sure. It's a lot of information that we're asking for, and we know that a lot of work goes into the application process from your end. So we're asking for some basic information that you should know off the top of your head, like where you work and what you do, your name, birthday, things like that. You'll fill out an online application form with the basic biographical information and your work experience. We're also asking for your academic background and a few other touch points, because we really are doing a holistic review of each individual applicant. So that's our goal, is to get to know you as best as possible in this setting, to learn your background, what you're bringing to the classroom, how well prepared you are to do well in the classroom, and what you'll contribute to the community, and if your expectations for the MBA experience are accurate and well-informed, but also that we can partner with you to meet your goals successfully. So we'll talk about the individual components some more, but you'll see kind of under the professional experience bucket, we're looking at your resume, your professional recommendations, that application form that we talked about where you're going to list your work experience. Then under your academic readiness, we're using your test scores and your transcripts to assess your readiness for our academic program, and so the GMAT or GRE are required. And then Goizueta Fit is something we talk about, where we want to get to know how you've been involved in your community, your workplace community, even relevant experiences from your undergraduate. We do interview every single applicant for the Evening MBA program, and that's important to us to get to know you better, hear your story in your own words, your personality, your communication skills, how you would do in a job interview, those sorts of things. But we'll talk more in depth, but that's kind of the broad view of we're looking for your professional experience, academic readiness, and then Goizueta fit.
All right, so let's talk more about that interview.
Sure.
So, you did mention the Goizueta fit, and we get to know candidates through the materials they submit, but it's really hard to get to know someone until you meet them in person. So that's why we require that interview for everyone. What's the most important thing a candidate can do to really ace that interview?
Sure. I think probably the best thing you can do is to spend time with your resume and be comfortable telling us your career story with that resume as a guiding tool. So our interviews are maybe a little bit different than you might see, even with our own other MBA programs and other programs around town, that we do require every applicant to interview before the deadline. So we do what we call a blindish interview, in that the person you meet with will be probably myself or my colleague Jessica Page-Inman, one of the admissions directors. Will have reviewed your resume beforehand, but we don't look at the rest of your application file. So you can submit that later, you can do the interview first, you can do it last, it's really up to you. We're really looking at your resume, so we want to see where you've been, where you are now, and that's what we want to hear from you in the interview. You're going to give us an introduction, talk us through your work experience, and then from there, where do you want to go? Why is an MBA the next step for you? What do you expect? What do you want to get out of the experience? General tips with the interview also go hand in hand with the resume. We offer resume reviews as an option. You can choose to do, it's a phone conversation with us ahead of time where we can give you an idea of maybe what looks great on your resume, what if we have any tips for making it better. But that will help you in the interview. Also looking at the essay questions ahead of time to be thinking about those answers and how to talk about yourself, because it's not something we all do more than maybe 140 characters at a time now, but being able to confidently tell your experiences, what you've gained from those different positions you've held, how you've added value to the organization, and then a lot about what you expect from the MBA program. So relax, have fun. It's a one-on-one conversation. We're not going to trick you into a wrong answer or anything like that. So just be ready and bring your questions as well. We'll have time at the end of every interview to answer questions about the program or individual questions you may have too.
Yeah, that's a really great point about it being a conversation and bring your questions, because the interview is a great opportunity for us to get to know you, but it's also a good opportunity for you to get to know us. So, Jordan, is there something that the interview helped you learn about Goizueta that made it stand out or that kind of cemented it as the right program?
Absolutely. So thanks for asking me, because I was going to jump in anyway. So it's about 13 months ago, Kathleen and I had a resume review. And as she mentioned, that's a huge, huge step, because you're able to start preparing yourself for the interview. You're kind of getting a feeling for the Goizueta fit as far as what your experience is like, what the program requires. And unlike other programs, what I really enjoyed is the ability to interview somebody face-to-face and tell your story versus just being a name on a piece of paper. I've made some bad hires before, because the person might look great on paper, but once you get in the day-to-day things, it's not, that fit just isn't there. So the ability for it to be both ways, where I'm able to know the school and they're able to know me, is huge. And I think my best advice to you: be yourself. Be comfortable in an interview. It's ask the tough questions and do some research beforehand as well. Show up prepared. Treat it like a job interview. But this is a big investment you're gonna make, and see if this will be your home.
That's great advice. We had a question coming in asking about the resume review. That's something that you obviously offer to any prospect. Can they do that more than once?
Oh, that's a fantastic question. I don't think it would be necessary. So technically, yes, especially if maybe you're not sure when you plan to apply. If you start looking at the program and connecting with us, but decide to apply in a later year, then certainly if you have changes to your resume and your work experience and you want to check back in with us. It's really meant to be a touch point, like Jordan said, to for you to connect with us, and we can answer questions with you, but we're also going to help you, give you an idea of how your work experience fits with our applicant pool and if the evening program might be the right fit for you. And we'll tell you if we think one of our other programs might be a better fit with in terms of your work experience, in terms of years and level. But it's also, again, a chance to make sure your resume is communicating what you want it to. And then just some organizational tips, like we'll talk about if you're coming from a research science background or maybe an IT consulting background and you have more of a CV and a project-based resume, we really do prefer an MBA, a business format. Things like that, reverse chronological order, just some basic things. My tip is always leave off the objective, please. It's only going to get you in trouble. It's a prime spot for typos or putting the incorrect school name there. So just leave the objective off. It gives you more space for other things. So that's my one bit of advice for the resume.
All right, good tip. They're looking for tips. Let's move on to essays. Essays are a big component, maybe the most time-consuming, and potentially the scariest for some folks, right? So essays are a great opportunity for them to talk more about their professional experiences. What else can someone convey about their candidacy? What are you looking for within the essays?
Sure. The essays, we understand it is time-consuming and stressful. It's not something you do frequently, writing about yourself. We've tried to set you up for success in that we have very clear questions. We have word limits, which might drive you nuts because you want to write longer, but we're trying to help you get to the point a little bit. One of the things I'm looking for in a great essay is a lot of meat, a lot of tangible examples, and without the exposition necessarily. So get to the point of what the project was, what the result was, whatever your goals are, those kinds of things. So if you had to break it down into bullet points in terms of the main points of your answer, would there be multiple bullet points with multiple changeable pieces of information or just one? Would prefer more. So it's not a creative writing program. Don't worry that you don't need to pull your thesaurus out. I can't even say it correctly, thesaurus. But communicating clearly and effectively and with meaty content is always going to be helpful for us. But we do enjoy getting to know you as well. There are a couple of questions there that allow for personality. We asked about an interesting or fun fact for you. So we're looking for communication style, effective writing and communication, correct grammar and spelling, all those good things. Goizueta, if you're going to use it, please spell it correctly. And then also the personality to come through. But you don't need a gimmick. It's not, we're not looking for super, genuine is more important than catchy, if that helps.
Yeah. Jordan, do you want to jump in here? How do you use the essays?
I really enjoyed writing them. I did. I took a strategy. It took me about a week to write them because I wanted to structure it out. The word limit drove me crazy because I wanted to tell a story. But it was helpful. So my strategy, I took about a week to write them. I would do little pieces. I'd build it up. So in the end, I had a substantial amount of information. But it was easy to start tearing it off from there and just make it more directive to the question they asked. I remember talking with old professors from undergrad, my wife, colleagues at work reviewed my essays for me, and I got great feedback. Ultimately, it's kind of fun. You're talking about your work story, how it relates, what you want to get out of the program. And my personal advice, it's okay to write a little bit much, and then you start trimming it down later.
Mm-hmm. So Kathleen, we do have an optional essay. Mm-hmm. What's the best way to use that?
That's a great question. I know this can give people some trouble sometimes. The optional essay is truly optional. What it really can be useful for is if there's some other piece of your application you feel is too open for interpretation, you want to make sure we have all the relevant information. So in my experience, in terms of the evening applicants, I'd say probably about half or less than half of applicants use the optional essay, and most of those people use it to explain or address maybe a concern they have in their academic background, particularly a semester or two that didn't go very well, that they wish they could go back and maybe address. They just want to let the committee know what was going on, if there were extenuating circumstances there. It can also be really helpful if you have an unusual situation with your recommenders that you're choosing. If you maybe are an entrepreneur or work in a family-owned business, you may need to choose recommenders that are outside of a typical supervisory role. So addressing that, explaining that to us can be very helpful. If you have any gaps in your work experience or unusual timelines on your resume that you just want to address, that's a perfect place to do that. But don't feel that you have to put something there unless you think there's, if you think the committee is going to have any questions about the rest of the information, that's a great place to answer it. But if you don't think there's a question, it's okay to skip it.
So we did have a question just come in about the essays, and it's, are the essays similar to a cover letter for a job interview?
That's a good question. I would say no, in the sense that we've tried to craft the questions well so that you can answer them clearly, and we're telling you what information we're looking for. I think I'm trying to think of what a great cover letter would be. It would include kind of the research you've done on the position. Okay, that's a good question.
Mine didn't read like a cover letter. I mean, I think there's 200. Some of them are 300 word limits, so there's just a little it's a big paragraph, and they're very direct. The cover letters tends to be a little bit, you get to tell a little bit more of a story versus just answering a question.
Okay.
Yeah. That's
Fair
an
enough.
Interesting point, though.
Yeah, great. Let's move on to recommendation letters. What's the best advice, Kathleen, that you can give when it comes to recommendation letters in terms of who you choose to write them, professional versus academic? What do you have to say about that?
Sure. We're very clear in our requirement that we ask for 2 recommendations, and they should both be professional in nature. So most commonly, those are coming from your current or recent supervisor, either direct or maybe indirect supervisor. So what we're looking for in those recommendations are the stories of your workplace personality, how you handle challenges, where your strengths are, maybe what you've been working on and improving in the workplace, how you receive feedback. Have you been able to act on it, improve, what impact you've made on the organization? So there's that kind of typical my boss or my former boss is going to write this recommendation letter. What really helps them write them effectively is if you give them information about the program, why you want the MBA, your experiences, what you think you've contributed. You can give them a refresher on the great work that you've done. You don't want to write anything for them, but you can certainly give them some things you're proud of and things you want to emphasize in your application. Things to avoid would be academic recommendations, and the reason we don't ask for those is because we have your transcripts. We're going to assume that if you did well in a class, that professor probably would write something positive. But if there is a situation when you had a close relationship with a professor in terms of working with them as a teaching assistant or on a project, something like that, you could ask them. But that would be a great supplemental one too. If you've been in the workplace for 2 and 3 years, as we expect, you should have some good formal professional relationships. But supplemental ones are fine too. Those 2 professional are required. You can certainly have 1 or 2 more, especially if it's an academic one like that, or a community organization, a volunteer, a nonprofit board, maybe an ERG within your company, or something like that, an alum that you have worked with, but maybe isn't your manager. We certainly welcome additional information as long as you have those 2 primary recommendations.
Jordan, who did you ask to complete your recommendation letters?
Thanks for asking. I absolutely love my 2 recommenders. They were aware that I wanted to pursue my MBA program since I started with Genuine Parts in 2011, and one of them was Bill Knight and Rick Spong. And Bill he hired me into Genuine Parts, but also was my assigned mentor. So he was aware since 2011 that eventually I was going to pursue the MBA. So last year when I asked him, he was thrilled about it. He already knew, just as Kathleen said, try to give them a little bit of a perspective as to why you want to pursue the program. These guys have been hearing about it for 6 years from me. So they're very eager to write it, and then they're both, Bill and Rick are both people that can write bad things about me and good things, but the challenges, I think that gives the recommendation letter a true, very holistic view of who you are as an employee and how you can succeed in the program.
Yeah, and I think we talked about choosing them wisely. We talked about giving them a few of the key highlights of some of the things you've done and why you want to pursue the program. Another tip I think we should put out there is give them enough time to write the letters. You don't want to spring it on them a couple days before the application is due. You want to let them have as much time to think about it and write something that's really going to bolster your application. So as much time as you put into thinking about your essays and other things, leave that time for your recommenders to do the same for you.
And in that vein, the process now is so much easier in that sense, in that you can enter their contact information in the application form and send them the form immediately. You don't have to submit the application, then have them fill out paper forms and send them by mail. We're a little faster now, so yes, the biggest tip with that would be to ask them to check their spam folder if they haven't received the email. But even if they haven't, we can always resend it. But yes, go ahead and put their information in, send them the form, and they can be working on it while you're still finishing all the other pieces.
Okay. So let's move on to community. And community is a big part of figuring out if this is the right program for you. And Jordan, you mentioned earlier that the class visit was one of the biggest components in helping you decide that this was the right program.
Absolutely.
So I'd love to hear a little bit more from you about how you engaged with students in the program when you were an applicant and when you were exploring programs, and any kind of advice that you have for prospects.
Yeah, sometimes I felt like I was communicating with the admissions team a little too much. I was bugging them so much. But no, they're always so eager to tell me more about it. They set me up with a current student, Ashley Freeman, who's been absolutely great. And I got to sit down, before I attended a class visit, I got to sit down with her and just ask open-ended questions. How do you feel about the program? And students will tell you the frustrations we have, how the schedule fits. I mean, this is a big commitment you're making. You're going to work during the day and then come to school at night. How does that play out? How does family life get involved? So getting to hear that feedback was very comforting, because you're thinking and worrying about these things, and you're the only person worrying about it, but there's other people that are validating your thoughts. Attending the class as well, you get to see what the MBA class is really about, the different backgrounds, people with musical backgrounds, finance backgrounds, an operations background, or a healthcare background, talking about leading groups and teams. Thoroughly enjoyed the discussion we had there, and it's funny how at 6:15 p.m., 6:30 p.m. to 9:15 p.m. really flies by like that.
All right. So keep the questions coming in. We have a few more that just came in that are really great, so don't be shy. We're here to answer your questions. That's what we're here for. We're going to move on to time to apply, and we had one come in that was asking, when's the best time to apply? When should I actually submit my information? Should I submit
Before
it early?
the deadline?
Well, is it better to apply early or to apply once I think that my application is really as good as it can get?
It's so that's a great question, and that's really common. And I know there's can be emphasis on the idea that you have to apply early or don't bother. And in this case of the Evening MBA program at Goizueta, I can confidently tell you that's not the case. We work really hard to make sure that we're making consistent admissions decisions across the full year cycle. And it is a long cycle for our program because you're working, you're busy. And oftentimes with Atlanta, people are transferred to Atlanta over the summer with their companies, or they find out they're moving here. So we have great applicants that come in at the very last round. So for the evening program, we do offer several different application deadlines. They're all essentially the same in terms of the admission decision. The only disadvantage with the last round is that it's a short turnaround time. You're getting your admission decision in July and starting the program in August. So that's pretty fast. But if that's what works best for you in terms of your unique situation, or maybe you started earlier and you took the GMAT and you want to take it again to submit make sure your application is as strong as possible, that's definitely reasonable. So in terms of if you're starting early, look at a timeline that fits with probably what is most time consuming if you haven't done it is going to be the test preparation. So give yourself time to take the test, prepare, and ideally take enough time to take it a second time if the first time doesn't go as well as you'd hoped, if you know you can improve your score. So the first couple of rounds, it's great if you're ready and your application is ready to go and get it in. But if you're choosing between two rounds and you know that few extra weeks is going to make a difference in how you feel about the strength of your application, then choose that later deadline. You can submit the pieces in any order. If you tell us you want to retake the test, we can put your application on hold until the next round. That's perfectly fine. Just keep us in the loop. Keep us informed with what your plans are. And that's the best thing you can do for yourself is start early, get it ready as early as you can, but make sure you're happy with it. And we want you to be happy with your application before we review it.
May I jump in?
Please.
I was one of those latecomers. Round 3, right? I finished the application, and I did everything my GMAT tutor told you not to do. I did that. I studied to the last minute. I decided to cram a little bit before the exam, and I didn't do so well. So I reached out to the admissions team and said, hey guys, can you put my application on hold? I'm going to retake it. And well, here I am, right? So I retook it. I followed the tutor's instructions and I did much better. So keep that as some advice. So just keep open communication with them. Really, they love chatting with you, answering questions. And I think that was very refreshing. When I submitted the application and I wasn't too happy with my score, and I said, I'll put it on hold. I'm going to retake it. They're able to adjust that for me.
That's great. Jordan, you touched on this a little bit earlier about how you kind of narrowed it down to the big 3 schools in Atlanta. Did you end up applying to all 3? Talk about your process and whittling it down and deciding how many to apply to and which ones.
Of course. There's a financial element there as you have to pay application fees. I think I had former colleagues and former supervisors that have been with the major 3 schools, and talking with them a little bit, I attended classes, attended web chats like these. What was the other question? I'm sorry.
How many you applied to, and how you decided which ones?
I applied to 5 different schools.
Okay.
And I think the interview was pretty key. I think most other programs, they'll invite you for an interview after they do that first review that you pass. These check boxes are marked, and I really enjoy the process here at Emory, as you're able to go out there first, kind of sell yourself separate from that process, and it's more of that holistic approach that we talk about to find the right fit. My process was, there's always the financial element, the class visits, talking with current students, and the interview was key. I think of all the interviews, I really enjoyed the Emory interview, and I'm not just saying that because I'm here. I really did enjoy the interview.
Touching again on finding the right fit, we had a question come in about the differences between the Evening MBA and the Executive MBA program. So they were wondering, is professional years of experience the only difference? Obviously, there's a lot more between the programs that are different. Format, years of experience, the curriculum itself is completely different. But I'll let you expand on that.
Sure. It's very similar in that it's Goizueta, and our aim is to graduate effective decision makers and leaders, well-educated and community members. But the approach is where the differences are. So the schedule obviously is very different. We have 2 MBA for executive formats. So one is modular, which means once a quarter, you're coming to campus for a week-long residency. And so it's an intensive week, and then you're doing remote work in between the residencies, and it's about 2 years long. And then our weekend executive program is every other weekend. You're coming here to campus for essentially a weekend, which is all day Friday and Saturday of courses. So there's a fair bit of crossover in terms of the professional experience that students bring to the classroom. Sometimes we have great candidates who are fits for the executive or the evening program. And then they'll choose on a few different factors. So one of them obviously is the schedule. Are you able to be out of the office for the required amount of time? Do you have that kind of flexible workplace, the investment from your managers? What's your best learning style? That's something I think it's important to take into account too. Do you want the intensive multiple courses at a time here on campus and kind of the shorter amounts of time of face-to-face contact, or a little bit more spread out with the evening structure? You're here 2 evenings per week. You're taking 2 courses per semester, 2 to 3 courses in a semester. So it's a little more spread out over a longer period of time, but for some people that's more manageable with their learning style and work schedule. And then also there's a difference in the financial prices, and just in terms of the tuition and what's added on to or included in tuition versus, I don't want to say a la carte, but the kind of the smaller optional components with the evening program and then the electives. In terms of the career support, the access to career coaches, there's no difference. They're both highly resourced, and you have again, it's also about where you choose to spend your time and what you take advantage of, the activities, the social time that you're spending with classmates, and then also with students in the other programs. So I'm not great at telling you here's a formula for how you choose, because likely you can see that yourself if you're clearly on one end of the spectrum. But otherwise, give us a call. We're happy to talk you through these different programs, and a lot of it can be about your career goals and where you want to go, why you want the MBA, how you want to use it in your career. But you can give us a call, and our other admissions directors and myself are happy to kind of ask you through these questions. And if you may come to the point that more than one program is a good fit for you, and that's great, we'll help you through that application process to be considered for both. So
yeah, I'll piggyback on that and actually say another big difference between the Evening MBA and our two executive programs is the amount of electives and concentrations that you have available to you. So in the Evening MBA program, I think there's over 100.
There's 60 plus electives.
Yeah.
Or sorry, 20 plus concentrations, 60 plus electives.
Okay. Yeah, whereas you have fewer options for specialization within the Executive MBA programs.
And there's a big piece that I didn't mention, which is the test requirement. So our application processes are slightly different. So all applicants to our evening and full-time programs are required to submit a GMAT or GRE test score. Our executive programs do have a test waiver application process. So that's all available on the website. You can submit your transcripts and resume and be reviewed for a test waiver. It's just a slight difference, but it does affect the specific application process. So,
okay, thank you. Back to applications themselves. So you've been here for more than 10 years in the admissions arena. What are some of the biggest blunders you've seen? I mean, we've given tips. We've talked about what to do. Let's talk about maybe what they shouldn't do.
Well, there are some kind of sweet mistakes that are the funny ones that I think back to. There's a particular alum who knows who he is, who was in his interview and he was gesturing at some point and his wedding ring flew off across the office and flew under a filing cabinet. So that was particularly memorable that we stopped the interview and found the ring before we moved on. But it all worked out. And then there have been some ones where it's gotten better, I think, but there are times when students who include the name of another school in their essay, sometimes recommenders do that as well. They'll recommend them highly for a program that is not the one that I'm reading the application for. So those are a little annoying, but certainly understandable. We understand sometimes you hit traffic on the way to the interview or things like that. The ones that are particularly frustrating are when an applicant makes a mistake that could have been easily solved or prevented by just calling us or asking us. So particularly deadline questions when they miss a deadline or tell us they hadn't heard a decision back from us, even though the decision release date was very clear, and they, got confused and committed to another school, which is just silly, crazy. Why would you do that? But just those kinds of simple misunderstandings that we would have been happy to answer a question. And if something's not clear on our website, tell us. We want to fix it, and those sorts of things. So, no, I think those are the ones. Not updating your resume before the interview, that seems a little crazy too, but for the most part, our applicants work really hard. They take the process seriously, and we really enjoy getting to know people and seeing how excited you are about advancing your career, advancing your education, and we're here to help you through that process. And so it's an exciting time of your professional and personal life, and we get to be involved, and that's we really enjoy it. So.
Yeah, I think Jordan actually had a really good tip earlier that will help you avoid some of those blunders. As he said that he had his wife and some colleagues read his essays. So that's a great way to avoid typos, grammatical errors, putting the wrong school name in, and making sure that you're actually communicating what you think you're communicating. Okay. Now let's talk a little bit more about just general application insights. Jordan, was there anything during the application process that really surprised you that you learned either about yourself or Goizueta?
I'll answer that second part real quickly. When I started applying, I mentioned to Kathleen that part of what I wanted to come here is Emory's involvement with the Latino community. As a Latino myself, she introduced me to Rebecca Kaplan, which is one of the recruiters, and I got to learn more about the school involvement in the Latino community, and that really drew me much closer to it. Something you hear about it, but now knowing more of how exactly they're engaged was huge for me. On the personal side, I think my interview was very, like I said, it's very conversational, and they're asking you questions, and everything is open-ended, and you'll start learning more about yourself as you're telling these stories, because as they're seeing different applicants, they're able to ask questions from different perspectives as well, and you'll, I guess, put down some walls that you'll be able to answer these questions truthfully. I mean, here it's okay, you're going to say where you failed on some things, and you're going to explain that, and that's the reasons of those failures are things that you want to learn in an environment like the MBA of how to succeed those.
Awesome. Kathleen, you mentioned this earlier about maybe someone reaching out and saying, I haven't gotten my decision yet. Mm-hmm. How are applicants notified of their decision?
Sure. We have worked hard to make the process very clear, so you have an application round deadline, and if everything's in by that deadline, you will hear from us on a specific decision release date electronically. So it'll be posted in our online system, and we also send an email. In some cases, make some phone calls. But you know the date to expect it. We're not going to surprise you or leave you hanging, like a rolling release might do. We try to be respectful of your time and appreciate that from the back. It is, if there's a situation where you are trying to figure out timelines and things like that, it's not particularly easy for us to, or it's difficult for us to release a decision early. If you're in a situation where you've been admitted to multiple schools, I can't speak for other schools, but I can say for us, if you have an admission decision from us and need to request an extension for your deposit deadline, that's pretty manageable. But releasing an admission decision early is more challenging. So if that is a situation you find yourself in, just give us a call.
Okay. We've had questions coming in around scholarships.
Mm-hmm.
So we do offer scholarships for our Evening MBA program. Can you talk a little bit about how applicants apply for scholarships, and then how are they notified if they've received a scholarship?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So again, we've tried to make this process pretty straightforward because we know the financial component is certainly important. And we also recognize that we have some fantastic applicants, and we want to recognize their academic and professional success with our scholarship awards. So all of our applicants are reviewed for admission as well as scholarship at the same time. So if a student is admitted, they'll be notified at the same time of a scholarship award that they've received. So if someone's admitted without a scholarship award, they could choose to submit new information after the fact. Most likely what would make an impact would be additional work responsibilities, promotions, things like that you think it makes a significant improvement to your resume, or an improved test score if that's something that might have been a weak spot in your application, or where we weren't concerned for admission, but a stronger score might make you more competitive for scholarship. But we do try to take all those components into account on the front end and give you a scholarship decision with your admission decision. So there are not separate awards that you need to apply for unless, but if there are, we will let you know about those. So.
Okay, so you mentioned test scores. It's a component of the application, it's a component of scholarship decision. Is it really all about the test score? I mean, talk about how you evaluate test scores in comparison to the other components of the application.
Yeah, it's I think it gets talked about a lot because it's obviously a stressful piece, and it's nobody wakes up on a Saturday thinking, yay, GMAT. But it's not that bad. Everyone, I've taken it, Jordan's taken it, we've all survived. It's certainly worth putting the effort into because it does provide the committee with valuable and really valid information too. This is something we've used over many years, and it is an accurate predictor of academic success in the first year, particularly in the core. So it's not something that we, determines the entire fate of an application, but it certainly is useful information for us. So we're using it in combination with your transcripts, your previous academic work. So they should be corroborating evidence, and that if you did well in undergraduate, you should have a pretty straightforward test score, or in the reverse, if you do feel that you are stronger in the classroom than in a standardized test, I will say there's not a diagnosis that says I'm not a good test taker. You can have, we understand that it's a tough test and you can struggle with it. We appreciate multiple retakes. It cannot hurt your score to take the test more than once, especially if you took it and you know you can do better. Give it a second chance. There's a lot of work involved. But give us a call too if you're concerned about your score, and we can give you an idea of how it fits into our profile too. But don't waste too much time explaining why you didn't do well on the test. Just either give it your best shot or, that's what you can do, and we understand that it's challenging. It is helpful for us. We do accept the GMAT or GRE. There's no official preference between the two. You won't see an average GRE score on the website just because we don't have as much data. Not as many students take it, but there's no disadvantage to taking it. You can use some online comparison tools to look at our average GMAT scores and how they translate to GRE. So typically, we like to see the 50th percentile above in the quantitative section on the GMAT, and that's more like the 60th percentile or above on the quantitative for the GRE. Our average GMAT tends to be around a 640 in the 80% range. It's really high 500s to low 700s, so there's a range there. And then if scholarship is a priority for you and you're considering retaking a test, that there is a correlation with the high test scores and the scholarship awards, but that's certainly not the only factor we consider in the scholarship award as well.
Okay. So we have, we like diversity in both professional and academic backgrounds. So we're not looking just for folks with business backgrounds, but for those folks who don't have that business background, any tips or recommendations you have for them for either setting themselves up as a good candidate in the application process or really preparing themselves for the program itself?
Yeah, that's a frequent question. So we do certainly have students who come from non-business organizations like the sciences, research, or even just different types of organizations, whether it's a nonprofit or a small family business, things like that. Anything outside of what you feel is a traditional organization. You can help the committee by telling us about the organization. What does the company do, or what does if you're a non-business background, what is your function and how do you fit into the organization? That's always going to be helpful information. And what are those skills that maybe aren't traditional business but are crucial to your organization? So I think research is coming to mind in that our lab and clinicians, scientists, maybe have a different organizational structure and a different hierarchy. So tell us about that in the interview and how you've been able to navigate that and learn about it, and also what research you've done into more traditional business organizations if that's your goal. If you're trying to make a move from one thing or another, that's something you want to make sure you've been proactive about research. I always say it's important not to apologize for not having a business background. There's no reason to feel that that's a major disadvantage to you. Just take what you have, explain it to us, and we want to learn about what it is that you do in the organization and then how you'll be able to contribute in the classroom, because every professional experience is going to be relevant in some way, and you bring that different perspective to the classroom, and that's how we learn and come up with new ideas and different approaches.
You know, some of the best questions I've heard so far in my cohort, there's somebody that played professionally in a symphony orchestra, another person in special forces, people from nonprofit. And I love the way they look at issues differently. You know, as you're working on case assignments, the different perspective is huge, and sometimes really moves your team from being stuck on something to getting the project done. So just
that's great
add on
insight.
there.
So Jordan, while we have you here, we've got a question that I think you're really the best suited to answer. So it's really about that work-life balance. So, what's the difficulty in balancing being part-time student, a full-time, employee, you have family responsibilities. How do you juggle that? And then we also have a follow-up question, which is it common for students to go part-time at their jobs to be able to handle this program? So Jordan, let's start with you about just how you manage the work-life balance.
Absolutely. I think communication is key. Really inform your company that what you're trying to pursue. My supervisor has been more than supportive about me being in the program, because as he's told me before, from the first month I was in the program, he's seen immediate payback. the work-life balance is, I mean, I can't stress communication enough, because there's cases where we're working on a project and I tell him, hey, I have finals this week, can we do something else? And he'll tell me, yeah, let's push it out another week. There's no issues there. There's not a hard timeline. My company's been very generous to me, and they've been able to, I shifted my schedule a little bit. I come in early and I leave at 4 o'clock, so that way I'm able to beat some of the traffic. Work-life balance, I think you're going to get a lot of advice from your classmates. I mean, you're going to talk to them. Just as I mentioned, when I visited a class, I got to ask these questions to a current student. Getting their perspective on how they solve these issues makes you realize you're not alone in this. And I think we have so much technology nowadays that can help us with it. I mean, sometimes you don't have to drive to campus. We use GroupMe. There's WebEx. I mean, there's a lot we can do just to be more efficient in our communication as well. And on the work side, I've heard nothing but positive things at work about being in the program and being at work at the same time. I think the ideas that you learn in class, you can immediately apply it to your work setting.
That's great feedback.
The other part was?
Well, Kathleen, I don't know if this is something that you can answer. Is it common for students to have to go part-time for their jobs to be able to handle the program, or?
No. So the program is really designed for working professionals. So it is a lot of work and it's a big commitment. But part of what we do on the front end is scare you a little bit. And as Jordan can tell you, you can do it. And you're all in it together. That cohort structure really does make a difference, that you can kind of find the best ways to campus. We know traffic is a challenge. How to talk to your managers, like Jordan said, it really should be manageable. And you also have the flexibility to slow down the program if you need to. You technically have up to 5 years to finish the program, but don't worry, nobody does that. But you're typically taking 2 or 3 courses in a term. You can take one course, particularly if you have a busy time of year, if let's say accounting or something, like if you're tax related, if you need to take just one class in that spring semester, that's manageable. But no, it would be very unusual for someone to go to a part-time employment situation, and we wouldn't recommend that as a plan. But yeah, you have a lot of people supporting you here at Goizueta. You also hopefully have your team at work and your family and friends to cheer you on. It's a big investment of time, but you can handle more than you are at any given time, and I think you see that. You get very efficient at work. We find that it can kind of help you to say, I have to leave at 5. There's no way around it, so I'm going to get this done by 5. I think that giving yourself that structure can actually make you more efficient and productive, and ideally, that's the goal.
Yeah, I mean, there is extra time in the day. I mean, it's amazing once you start slotting more things in your calendar. You're going to realize, okay, I can do this. I don't. Sometimes I use my lunch to read. Right, I go into a breakout room and I just read my assignment for that night. Parking's free for in the evening as well, so that's pretty nice. Yeah. And quick element here of just that cohort support. There's been cases where a teammate is out traveling for work, and we're trying to meet, but we say, hey, you're traveling right now. Worry about that. We'll get your back. And then do us a favor, do some review as well. So there really is that concept of community where we carry each other forward big time. So I absolutely love that about the program.
Great. That's a great point. Thanks, Jordan. So we're going to wrap up here shortly. Any last tips, advice, anything you'd like to share either about the application or just about the program itself, Jordan?
It's like Kathleen said, it's a commitment, but it's doable. I mean, you enjoy it. Attend class visits. Speak with classmates. If I can answer any questions offline or anything like that, shoot me a note. I'd be glad to talk about the program as well. And we're just normal people going to school at night, and we can all do it.
Kathleen, any last advice?
Yeah, I'd say use the application process as preparation for being a student again, and for your career progression as advancement as well. So using this resume prep as a time to sit down and really think about what are the accomplishments, but also what do I contribute to my organization? What is my value add? What's my brand? Start working on building your brand. Using the GMAT, studying GMAT or GRE prep as an academic prep. What time of the week do you study well? Is it mornings? Is it evenings? Is it middle of the night? Or is it during your lunch break? Things things like that, just getting back in the habit of studying and preparing and thinking about your personal and professional development will really help you in the application process and as a student and later on.
Okay. So if you have any more questions that you think of after this chat, you can go ahead and email us at mbaadmissions@emory.edu. Also visit the website. You'll have a lot of information there to answer your questions. Obviously, there's the contact info on the website as well. That's emory.biz/evening MBA. Also, before we go, I'm just going to remind you, we have recorded this web chat. We're going to send it out to you via email within the next week. So if you miss an answer or anything, you'll have that for review. We had a lot of questions around the GMAT, so I'm going to mention that we did a GMAT web chat with a phenomenal GMAT prep coach last month, and we had that on our website as well. So if you go to our YouTube channel or to our website, there's a lot of resources, web chats we've done before, GMAT prep, a lot of information that's going to be valuable for you as you're evaluating programs and as you're applying to the program. So lastly, I'm just going to go ahead and mention that we have 2 more upcoming web chats, scheduled. So next month we're going to be talking about becoming a dynamic leader with a Goizueta MBA and the phenomenal leadership development that we incorporate into the program here. That's on Wednesday, March 21st. And after that, in April, we're going to talk about career success with your Goizueta Evening MBA. You're all working professionals, but obviously you have some professional goals in mind, and that's why you're coming to get the MBA. So we'll talk about the resources that we have available to you. So the email that you get within the next week will have the link to this recording, and it will have links to the future web chats for you to register for those as well. So thank you again, Jordan and Kathleen, and thank you everyone for the phenomenal questions.